All right, so we were talking about Star Wars.
Yeah. Okay. So you're wrong. He was saying, you were saying that you thought that the general was the bad guy,
Yes,
right?
I forget his name, but
Whatever the fuck his name was, the
Don
bug-eyed fucking.
Donald Gleason is the actor's name, so we'll just call him
Yeah, Dom.
Gleason or something.
Gleason.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
okay.
Gleason. So you're saying Gleason's the bad guy, and I'm like, he is a
Yeah.
bad guy. Like obviously, like in the movie, he's doing evil shit. So I'm not saying
Yeah.
he isn't an evil fucking bastard, but
Yeah.
he's not like the bad guy because it's like there's several scenes where the fucking glowy techno ghost Jedi man
Yeah.
was like, he was glowing and he was all like, duh, do the thing and this and that or whatever. And clearly there was a power struggle between. This is actually the most equal. Like I should preface this with, I haven't read any of the. I read some, but I haven't read enough of the extended universe.
Oh, okay. All right.
Like,
neither have I.
Yeah, but for whoever's gonna be watching,
Oh,
this,
gotcha.
I'm just guessing. Like all I'm doing is I've watched the movies.
Yeah. Yeah, you're wondering why we're talking about this, we just got back from seeing the new Star Wars movie, so I know we're late, but we watched it in theaters at least.
Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right? Like, we saw it.
We saw it. Like, what the fuck you want? Like, alright.
Now, my point is that Gleason is the bad character. I was telling her earlier that whenever I watch the Star Wars movies, I see them as, you have these, the Sith Lords, Jordan will tell you that Kylo Ren, the Sith Lord, is the real bad guy. Or I don't want to put words in my mouth, but for argument's sake, and I always think that the Sith Lords, they still have the Force in them. It hasn't awakened yet, and even throughout the movie, they point out that there's still some light in him. And on the other side, I always see, the empire, the bureaucratic side of people who aren't worried about feelings and stuff like that, and are so caught up in the red tape. And this movie has a big point on I wouldn't say genetically manipulating someone, but epigenetically manipulating them by just stealing them from birth. It's kind of like the child soldier type.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was. That's
yeah.
Exactly what, that's he's like, oh, you can trust my soldiers because what's her name, like the shiny stormtrooper.
Oh, I forget. I don't like her though.
Yeah, she seems like a bitch. I mean, whatever.
And even that, it seems like there's a debate in the movie about humans versus droids. You don't really see very many droids in the movie. Maybe in the second one, and Kylo Ren is just like, if there had been robots doing this, then we wouldn't have the main black guy in the movie, Ben, or what's his name? Finn. That wouldn't have ever happened, right? Because a droid would have just been never made that decision, and that set everything off.
But the other side of that was that we saw the problems with drone armies or droid armies in the other movies. Remember?
Yeah, that's true.
They're because they're just
they couldn't make those core decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, they can't they'd just be what, and they're a lot more easily they can't be influenced by the Force as much, but because they're objects, they can be thrown a lot easier.
Shoot. Yeah,
but so there are pros and cons to that. So but you're kind of wrong when they say that they don't care about feelings, because in the first movie or in the prequels, remember Anakin, he's a slave and his mom's a slave, and they work for that racist caricature of Jew.
Oh yeah.
That's not under the Empire, by the fucking way. That's under the Republic. The Republic is fine with slavery. As soon as the Empire rolls in, there's probably a whole scene where Anakin's mom gets, is touchingly freed by Empire soldiers who were just no slavery and follow these rules, and everything's fine. Because the only people that they're fighting are the Jedi, or the light side, or whatever, the Republic, right?
Do you think there was slavery in this movie? Because I think that, what happened to Finn and tons of other troops I think that's basically another form of slavery.
Yeah, I'm not saying, but I'm also saying, that is, clearly, that's war crimes. That is awful. But I'm just saying that the Empire isn't the only, the Republic did that on their side too. So it's
that's true.
I'm not saying it's good either way, but clearly the Republic, because, what's his name, the guy, Qui-Gon Jinn, the guy that went and got Anakin, he didn't have a problem. He was like, yeah, slavery, whatever, and then he's just like, oh yeah, you'll be a slave. Oh wait, this is doing something. Loading photos. Is it still recording.
So? Yeah, no, it's still recording.
Okay. As you can see.
Yeah.
Whatever. We'll edit that out. Or you'll edit that out.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, he's fine. He's not like, oh, this is a terrible, terrible thing. He's just like, and he's totally cool with being like, yeah, it's fine. We'll just throw literal children into literal death races for their right to have their own freedom. Like, that's pretty hardcore. And like, Qui-Gon's just like, yeah, whatever. That's chill. Like, and
well, I mean, they gotta make sacrifice on both sides. Like, that's the cost of warfare.
Well, I mean, and that's, I'm sure, what the Empire would say. They're like, well, what are we supposed to do? Like, do that, like, to our own, like, children? Like, why, you know what I mean? Like...
Yeah, but notice, like, in the movie when, like, General Leia, I guess, is, you know, when she's talking to Finn and trying to get stuff from Finn, she's just, her replies are always like, yes, we'll do whatever we can, but can you help us? Yes, oh, we can do that, but first you have to tell us everything you know. And when Han Solo is talking to his son, the son's like, oh my god, you know, basically saying that I need help, unbeknownst to Han Solo time to kill Han Solo, but he's just like, yes, anything I can do, I'll help you, whatever. That's, you know, that's the point they're coming from. And whenever you're dealing with the Empire, it's always just very, you know, like, you know, just, sure, they get the job done, but they get it done in such a hostile work environment. You know, who would want to be on the Death Star with Darth Vader or Kylo Ren or whatever?
Is, like, why? Well, and that's actually kind of brings me back to my point, which is that, I mean, I don't know any of the extended universe, as I've said before, but, like, to me it seems like the Empire and the Republic must be these pretty well-established, you know, governments that have just been, you know, across multiple star systems, clearly. Like, I mean, I don't know the entire breadth of the universe, but obviously, like, if you go to any given, like, populated planet and you say that you're with the Republic, or you say, well, you're with the Empire, or if you just say, do you know who the Republic or the Empire is, and they're like, yeah, we know who they are and that they're fighting, it's like, clearly they've been around for a long fucking time. And I'm pretty sure that the Jedi were part of the Republic, or the Old Republic, or, like, whatever you want to...
Well, I mean...
Like, or they may have been their own faction.
Loki was once an angel, right? You know?
Yeah, but what I was saying is that, like, so let's say that they did have some, you know, discord in there, because I mean, the Jedis are kind of assholes, first of all, because they're like, they tell the Jedi, you're not allowed to have children. They're like, you have to live here in seclusion. You can only train. You can't, like, have sex. You can't get married. You can't, like, have a family or anything like that. Even though Force powers are only genetic. That sounds to me like eugenics. That sounds to me like they're trying to keep...
I don't think Force powers are solely genetic, no, and I don't believe that is such a necessarily harsh fate. I mean, that's basically living the life of a monk in a monastery.
Yeah, but you don't get to choose that. Like, because literally the Jedi are like, train with me or your dark side. That's, I mean, if you're forced to pick one or the other, it's kind of like the dark side doesn't seem like they give a shit what you do as long as you get the job done. Whereas the Jedi seem to be like...
I think the dark side definitely cares.
Well, no, they care, like, as long as you work with them, right? But they don't care about about how you do it. They just care that you get the job done. Whereas the Jedi are like, all they care about is how you do what you do, but not necessarily what it is that you do.
You're saying that without the context, though. They're saying you have to do it the right way and get the job done. The evil people, the Empire, are saying, no matter what, you know, kill if you have to, but get the job done. I think that's a less heroic way to approach things.
Well, no, because they're like, they're bottom liners. They're like, we need to get the job done. Whereas the Jedi are like, even if we don't get the job done, we have to make sure that we do things in the right way.
Yeah, that's my point. I think that's a noble way to go into
but
battle.
that way also means that they're okay with slavery, because they're okay with, because, you know, freeing people from slavery means a lot of violence and death. I mean, just in general, if you need to free an entire population. So, like, if they're not okay with fighting that war, then they'll just let slavery go on because it means less death and bloodshed right now. Like, you know, they get caught up a little bit, I think, too much with, like, the stuff that's in front of them, and they don't have enough, like, kind of long-term goals in mind, because then because that's true. It's like, even though fighting to free people, that is obviously a noble cause, like, you know, we are the what's it called, the descendants of the winners of the Civil War, like, in America, so obviously that's, you know, but we don't have slavery in our country, so we clearly, as Americans, believe that slavery is a bad thing. And so, as Americans, I would say...
Well, I'd argue, as Americans, we're descendants from both sides of the Civil War, not just the winning side.
Well, yeah, but everyone's on the winning side when it's a civil war at the end. You know what I mean? Like, even if you don't want to be, and that was kind of the problem. That's why the South still has so many issues, and that's why the South hasn't had a representative democracy as equal as it was in the fucking Reconstruction era, which was right after the Civil War. They haven't had as representative a democracy in their in any of their whatever. I don't want to get politics, but like shit in the South is still shitty, like because they.
I don't think the South is shitty.
Well, politically, yes, it is very bad for Black people and people who are minorities in the South because there's a lot of just institutional racism. There's just a lot of
I'd say there's racism. I don't think it's institutionalized.
It is. It's
in what way?
Because, like I said before, the Southern, Democratic representative government hasn't had. When I say it hasn't been representative, meaning right in post-Reconstruction, they forced them to, they had soldiers there. They allowed everyone, they were like, all these people get to vote. You can't do this, and there were soldiers there with guns to enforce it because there had to be, because otherwise, if you just put the people in the South back in charge, they'll just do the exact same thing they did before.
Mm-hmm.
So when they had the people there in Reconstruction, they had Black congressmen, they had Black senators, because there's a huge Black population there.
Mm.
As soon as the troops left, the Reconstruction, the stopped occupying the South, we haven't had as equal a representative, or I say we, the South hasn't had, specifically Black people, but also other people of minorities, haven't had a representative government as good, locally, since then. I mean, how can you say that isn't institutional racism?
I would say that it's just not institutionalized. It's basically just people keep it in the back of their heads. Like, there are racist people in the institutions, but racism is not taught in the schools, nor is racial bias exercised publicly.
When you talk about institutionalized racism, I don't mean necessarily that there are written laws or anything that says that it's not like Jim Crow laws or poll tax or literacy tests. That's what most people think of when they think institutional racism. But it's also just not allow there being a glass ceiling on anyone who's a minority, where it's just yeah, okay, you can be Black and take an interest in politics, but you'll never become a congressman, you'll never become a senator, because clearly they haven't. Throughout all the years, they haven't. You can't argue with that record. It's just, look, it can't be an accident, it can't be a fluke. There has to be something there that's keeping it, be it money, be it conspiracy, be it, maybe the people in the South are just racist.
I'll ask you this question. How would you analogize the two sides? I guess it'd be an allegory because it's an extended metaphor, but if the North and the South were the Republic and the Empire, would you agree with that? Would you agree that the Republic is the North and the Empire is the South?
It would be the other way around, man. Republic would be the South, because the Republic's the one that's cool with slavery.
How are they cool with slavery again?
Because they're fine in planets.
I think we established that both sides are cool with slavery.
Well, the Empire is more cool with imperialism, which is still slavery, but it's like slavery with extra steps, basically. Where it's more it's just imperialism. Like the British did.
Yeah.
And
you don't have to explain.
That's more what the Empire is fine with, but not actual as in people who were given status as slaves in their country. You know what I mean? They're not cool with that kind of slavery. They're cool with a little bit more of a slightly more not as obvious form of slavery, which you can even and then you can, if you I think what you were saying before is, how do you define slavery? You can broaden that to a lot, because a lot of politicians are calling the credit debt crisis in England and America the new form of slavery, because because what is it? You have people who are basically indentured servants to credit companies, working for money, but not making that money themselves, having that money go directly to their debtors, which only covers their interest, which means it doesn't actually go towards the principal amount that they actually owe. So that means that interest still keeps accruing even as you keep putting it back. So it's literally just indentured servitude, which is basically just the step that you are in before you're a slave. So it's in a lot of ways, slavery never really went away. It's never really gone away. There's always going to be, someone who's subjugated. Usually poor people, not always. Sometimes it's race, sometimes it's religion, sometimes it's. I'm sure we'll find many, many different ways to hate and subjugate each other in the future, in ways that we haven't thought of. But kind of back what I was saying was that so the Jedi. I can't believe we were talking about Star Wars. So the Jedi, what I'm imagining has happened way, way back in the day because whatever. I haven't read most of the extended universe, but they're clearly, if there's a dark side and a light side, there must have been a schism between this religion, which it is. It's religion. It's it's a cool religion because it's true,
Yeah.
but it's still a religion. Where where the Jedi believed in basically it's more more meditative. They don't take an active part usually in politics and stuff like that. They're always kind of in the background because they're because they're so powerful. That's kind of the idea, is that because they're so as individuals so strong.
Yeah, but what's the difference between the Jedis and the Sith Lords? I mean, if you can condemn the Jedis, can't you condemn the Sith Lords?
Yeah, I'm not saying that's kind of my point, is that the people who are the bad guys aren't Jedi or Sith, and it's not Republic or Empire. It's literally just Jedi. The Jedis are the bad guys. The Jedi are the reason why all of this is going on. You think? Because I'm saying
you mean Jedi and Sith Lords?
Well, yeah. Well, when I say Jedi,
collectively.
I mean collectively anyone who's got Jedi mind or Force powers.
Force powers. Okay.
Force people who can manipulate the Force powers. I mean, not everyone who can manipulate the Force powers is evil. I'm saying that the people who are in power who do manipulate Force powers clearly don't have the best interests of people who aren't, either on their side or Jedi's at heart.
I'd say that the Jedis do and the Sith Lords don't. That's what separates them.
I don't think the Jedi do either, because again, they're okay with slavery. They're okay with.
I don't think Jedis are okay with slavery. I think that's probably the Republic side of the good side.
Yeah, but if the Jedi need the Republic, then they have to make.
They don't.
They do need the Republic because that's otherwise the Sith would crush them, right? That's the whole.
No, the Sith wouldn't crush them without the Empire. But if neither they had the Republic and the Sith didn't have the Empire, then it would be even again.
No, I think the dark side would probably win. I think that the Sith would probably win over the Jedi simply because
that's what you think, but that's not how the movie ends.
Well, no, but that's because they brought all these other people, and they brought the Empire and they brought the Republic into the fight. And I think that's the reason why people with Jedi powers are the bad guys, is because they keep pulling people into their fight. It's not these guys fight.
Well, no, the Jedis didn't want to fight. The Jedis are peaceful. They only fight because the
Sith want to fight. But the Sith
fight.
obviously had a reason to fight them. I don't know what that reason was, but people.
Yeah, but you can keep going back and back and back, something like that. Eventually, I think you get to a point where there was only Jedis, and then one person turned against them, similar to the movie where they were teaching all of the Jedis, and then one guy turned against them, and then started the whole thing again.
Well, I mean, it's not that. I mean, there's always been the dark side, because there's that guy, the skeleton, the bald guy that was in a giant chair giving them the orders. He's clearly
Snow.
What's his name?
Snow or Snoke.
Snoke, whatever his name is. Yeah, he's clearly also got Jedi powers. Where did he come from? He was clearly either trained or maybe wasn't trained or something like that by Jedi. So it's obviously that's what happened, because we keep seeing that happen over and over again. Is that people disagree? Is that
I don't see how this proves that General Gleeson is a bad guy.
Obviously, the Jedi
or a
way.
Good guy.
Well, I'm not saying he's a good guy.
That's what the whole point was. I think he's a bad guy, and you think that he's, or you think he's a real. You think that Kylo Ren's the bad guy, and I think that.
Wait, who's Kylo Ren again? Was that Ben?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I can only remember his name is Ben because that's what Han called him, and I was like, well, okay, that's his name. Because I never knew what his name was before. I just saw his image. I'm like, it's that guy. But what I'm saying is that clearly the Jedi way, their way, isn't good enough for everyone. And instead of trying to
the same thing about the Sith way.
Yeah, that's kind of my point. And so, but instead of trying to address, instead of the Jedi being like, oh, this person's not, clearly doesn't, they just assume that their way is so good and right. They're just so sure of that anyone who tries to deviate or who has questions about it is immediately like, oh, are you going dark side? Are you going to become evil? And, if you tell someone, enough that they're going to become evil if they think against this way, then they're probably going to start believing that they're evil. And I mean, I'm not saying that it's obviously not any one person's fault when these things happen. It's like obviously the guy who
It's systemic. Yeah, I agree.
It's systemic. So the Jedi need that. It's their fault that this keeps happening. Because,
why is it their fault?
Because they don't make compromises. Because
they totally make compromises.
They're perfectly willing to compromise with slavery.
So they can't compromise.
They're perfectly able to compromise when it suits their needs, like when they need to work with the Republic and when they need
Same
to do
with the
like
Empire.
that. But when it comes to actually preventing all of this conflict from happening in the first place, they're just like, no.
What's the first place?
The first place being that Jedi fighting with each other about how they should, about like the Jedi Order.
No, because it's not Jedi fighting with each other. It's
that's essentially all it is. That's who.
It's the Jedi fighting
who's in charge of
the Empire.
Who's in charge of the Republic's, like, the resistance, basically, from the Republic?
The Republic.
The Jedi.
No, the Republic are the people who sit in the chairs and make decisions. The Jedis are the knights carrying out the King's orders. They're literally called Jedi Knights.
Yeah, the general, right, is like they're the ones they're fighting all this, and the people who's pushing them on the side of the Empire are also Jedi, or they're Sith Lords, whatever. They're also Jedi powered people. So it's like, to me, it just seems like these people up here, the Jedis, are all fighting each other, and they're just pulling everyone underneath.
I think we'll conclude with this. I think you bring out a good point, which is that the council on the Empire side is made up of actual Sith Lords. The council on the Republic is not, and I think that's a perfect way for me to actually let you win me over, because I agree. I like to side with the religious, POV in the Star Wars, which is the Jedi and the Sith Lords. And I do think now I realize the Empire, having Sith Lords in their actual council, is a better way of integrating than the Republic, which is kind of, I guess you'd say, the old way of doing things, where it has to be segregated. And I think that's all the time we have. So join us next time for talking about Star Wars.